So good morning, everyone. Terry Maselli here, the CEO of the HIA-LI. Hope you're all staying very, very safe and very healthy. Know that the HIA-LI is here with everyone else, fighting the fight for you on a daily basis. And again, hope you're doing well in your businesses and really taking some advantage of this phenomenal financial aid that is coming out of the SBA and our partners at the SBDC who are helping really navigate that sometimes very complicated road, right? Because we're running our businesses. So I want to thank all of our members. I have to tell you that we have seen an abundance of kindness, let me say, from all our members, and really many of you repurposing your manufacturing plants to push out some very, very needed equipment in the field for our healthcare workers and our police department and our fire department. So thank you for that. And also many of you have heard of the phenomenal news of Kembaya right in the Long Island Innovation Park at Hauppauge, who have created an antibody for testing in the coronavirus. So some magnificent things going on through these very, very turbulent times. And again, I am so proud to be leading an organization with members like you. So thank you. We're delighted to have both Robert and Bernie back for the second phase of really this financial aid. And I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Anthony Forgione. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Terry. And good morning, everyone. And welcome to our third update for the SBA and the SBDC. I'm sure you all know both Robert and Bernie because they've been very active in this period we're in right now. You do have the option to submit to me, put something in the Q&A field, and I will ask both Robert and Bernie that question. But why don't we start with Robert? Robert, you're in high demand. You've been doing these things, I think, daily, it seems like. So I'll turn it over to you and let you give us the latest.
Well, thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Terry. So, and of course, we have Bernie on, my partner online. His shop at the Small Business Development Center at Stony Brook, along with Erica Chase over at Farmingdale Small Business Development Center. They are powerful in terms of what they can do for folks. But what's happening? We all know that the new appropriations bill did, in fact, come in, and a lot of, as good as that is, there's been a lot of questions lately of the last day or so. But suffice to say that the SBA is doing all it can to sort of process the applications for both the EIDL that are sort of backlogged, as well as the PPP funding that's going out. And it's an exciting time. I get a lot of people calling me and emailing me, and that's great. But they always precede their questions with, I know you're busy, but you know what? It's no more important than what you're suffering and what you're doing out there. So please never hesitate to give me a shout, whether it be through Anthony and Terry or my email is robert.pihota@sba.gov. If I don't get to you right away, I will get to you. No email goes unanswered, I don't think. And if it is, just because of my error, but please be perseverant. There's no time like the present to get your answers to your questions resolved. As I mentioned before on previous engagements, there's only one me, one Bernie, one Anthony, one Terry, but the power of the SBA resource partners, the SBDCs, SCORE, please reach out. A lot of folks can work on your behalf while you're busy taking care of your families, yourselves, and your businesses. So I won't go too much into the weeds at this point, but I just want to say there's really, your participation on these programs is vital. I can put out a lot of information. Bernie can wax poetic about a lot of things, but quite often your questions prompt us to maybe get answers that we've never even thought of asking before. So keep that in mind. I'll turn it back over to you, Anthony. I'm really curious about the questions.
Okay. Actually, Bernie, you want to give any sort of update first before I ask a question?
Yes, I have some thoughts that I'd like to go through, and thank you, Anthony, and good morning, everyone. And I'd like to echo Rob's comments. I am on the phone for a good part of the day, getting back to people that have reached out to me. I get quite a number of emails through our office on focused questions. So I address those as well. And I make it a point to get back to everybody during the day that, I receive their initial correspondence. So, we all have a role to play here. As I had mentioned previously, we have 8 advisors at Stony Brook. We continue to experience a surge of client appointments, and I see that continuing for some time. I'd like to begin this morning by bringing to your attention where we stand nationally. I always like to do that from a macro perspective, and then review where we stand with these 2 federal programs. We all know that we have good news. We have what I characterize as CARES Act 2 for $484 billion. That's broken out by $250 billion for traditional PPP, another $60 billion for PPP loans specifically targeted towards very small businesses which did not have a business relationship with the money center bank. The $60 billion for economic injury disaster loan program, which was added to the $17 billion. Also in that package included $75 billion for hospitals and $25 billion for new COVID-19 testing. Other good news is that the Federal Reserve has agreed to purchase the bulk of the new PPP loans from banks to eliminate the bank's exposure to bad loans. And that's resulting in more banks being willing to accept and approve these loans. The bad news, there's still a continuing general consensus in Washington that both the CARES Act 1 and CARES Act 2 stimulus will not be sufficient. There are growing signs that the economy is deteriorating faster than expected. I would anticipate further stimulus. There are 30 million small businesses in the country. About 3 million will be able to get a PPP loan. If we think that out of that 30 million, perhaps 20 to 25% don't need this stimulus financing, that still leaves about 22 to 24 million that would require it. If 3 are successful in getting the PPP loan, that leaves about 20 million that still would require some sort of finance. So there is a realistic limit to how much the federal government can do here. Obviously, what they've done to date is unprecedented, but there's more to be done in my estimation. As we all know, the unemployment rate has increased dramatically over the past 3 weeks. 17 million people, or 10% of the workforce, have filed for unemployment. I read an article just this morning indicating that unemployment might increase to as much as 20% in June, which would be comparable to the unemployment rate in the Great Depression back in 1933. Goldman Sachs is predicting a huge budget deficit for the federal government this year. That number might increase based upon the number that I represented just a couple of weeks ago, $3.7 trillion. So we'll have to wait to see if any more federal stimulus packages are passed. And finally, if the virus persists, meaning if we get a second wave, the industry group associated with small businesses indicates that perhaps as many as 7.5 million small businesses will go out of business across the country. Since Long Island is a hotbed of small business, over 100,000 small businesses here, that would logically mean that if we apply that percentage times 100,000, that 25,000 or so small businesses would be adversely affected here on Long Island. If you think that there's 3 to 4 people that are associated with each small business on average, we're looking at perhaps 75 to 100,000 people that would be continued to be on unemployment. Looking back at the results of the first program, as Rob mentioned, the SBA is doing what it can in order to process these idle disaster loans. I had found out that previous to this crisis, they had averaged maybe about 9,000 approvals of loans each month across the country for a total of about 110,000. Over the past month, they've tripled that rate. They've gone from 9,000 to 27,000. So they've really picked up the pace here. Yet, we know now that for this EIDL program, almost 4 million applications have been received by the SBA. So even because of this increased rate of going through the applications, still there are years, theoretically, of applications that they have to wade through. And that's, I think, the primary reason, the reason that they've no longer accepting applications for the EIDL program. So for the first month, the EIDL program, there were 27,000 loans approved across the country. In New York State, there were 1,100. For the Stony Brook Small Business Development Center, so far, we've seen 3 approvals, totaling $1 million. We've seen many more payroll protection loans being approved, maybe about 20 or so. So that one is being addressed far more quickly than the EIDL loans because of the nature of the underwriting, the review that the SBA has to go through. At the same time, these advances that we were told were going to be $10,000, and now they're up to $10,000. As of April 20th, there were 50,000 processed and approved in New York for a total of 211 million. And as far as the PPP program, there was 1.7 million of those loans approved in 13 days over the original program. I anticipate that there'll be roughly about the same amount here, about 1.3, 1.4 million. So you're getting a total loan count of about 3 million, comparing that to the total number of small businesses out there that I think, based upon my back of the envelope analysis, maybe 20 million that might be caught up in this and would like this kind of stimulus package. You still have 15, perhaps 20 million small businesses that won't be able to avail themselves of this unless there's another stimulus package that is passed. Rob, had sent out to his mailing list midday yesterday that as of the first day of PPP2, the number of approved loans was almost 500,000, and the volume of approved loans was a little bit over 50 billion. So, in brief, the economic injury disaster loan is no longer accepting new applications. It's a first come, first served basis. And they're going to need a lot of time to work through all of these applications. The payroll protection program, many banks are not participating, not accepting new applications. They're working down their previous applications that were not addressed during the first go round. I've tried to find out just who is accepting applications now. I know that the NYBDC, through their online service Pursuit, did not accept PPP applications in the first round, but they just started accepting them yesterday when they opened up at 10:30. They're accepting them up to 350,000. Also, financial technology online firms, you could try those as well, including Cabbage and Intuit. We know that the PPP loan program has a unique feature, loan forgiveness. If 75% or more of the loan is used for employee payroll, then there's essentially total forgiveness will be available for the product. These forgiveness applications are to be submitted after we all know this 8-week period of time during which these monies are to be used for a very narrow range of allowed expenses to be paid. That forgiveness application and the process to go through it, as I see it, is going to be far more complicated than the application process in order to get the money. So I want to bring to your attention that that's going to be demanding. Now I'm getting questions from clients that have gotten the money, are planning on how to use it during the 8-week period of time, and are reaching out to me and others on my staff with focused questions on the loan forgiveness application. So I expect that that's going to be quite demanding once we get into July and August. So we all know that the Payroll Protection Program is more or less an honor system. You sign off a certification on the 2-page application. Keep in mind that if you do not use these funds for the authorized purposes, then it can be interpreted as a felony. It's something that's brought to the attention on the 2-page application. So it's very, very important, obviously, that you make sure that you only use these funds for approved purchases, approved expenditures. So what have I observed during this process over the last month or so? Again, with the CARES Act 2, there's a finite amount of money. No guarantee that there's going to be any further relief. If you haven't put in your application, do so ASAP, obviously, if you haven't done so already. Secondly, because these programs are rolled out on a very quick basis, there has been a number of clarifications provided by the U.S. Treasury Department and the SBA. I would expect that to continue. You can also, if you don't have success with those online lenders, those financial technology firms that I had mentioned previously, I also think that you might have success reaching out to large online lenders such as Live Oak Bank and Celtic Bank. A couple of weeks ago, I had recommended Newtek. I understand that Newtek is no longer accepting applications, but they did accept about $500 million of applications during the first program. Our response continues to be that we're very much fully engaged. We're going to be retaining another business advisor near term. We've been notified by the SBA that New York State is going to be provided with $11 million of funds in order to staff up its SBDC centers. I can share with you that the centers upstate are not seeing the kind of surge that we're seeing here downstate. One of the reasons is that they don't have as many cases upstate. And secondly, that the businesses, it looks like at this point in time, that the governor is looking to start the process of opening upstate a little bit sooner than the downstate region, which would of course include Long Island, Greater New York City, and Westchester. We are working with the Stony Brook School of Business in order to draw graduate business students in order to provide support services to the Small Business Development Center. I continue to work with my fellow economic development initiatives at Stony Brook University. We are partnering with them in a technology training outreach. This will be that students from our technology related business courses along with computer science will be selected, maybe up to 10 or 15 of these students. And then they will be given a curriculum by which businesses that are challenged in technology will be able to reach out to these students with overview provided by economic development, as well as the Stony Brook Technology Entrepreneur in Residence, to make sure that these training services are focused and appropriate for the business owners that are getting in touch with the university under this program. So the last thing I'd like to mention, something that is not mentioned, I think, as frequently as perhaps it should be, is that as part of the CARES Act 1, there's additional small business debt relief under the auspices of the SBA. Will cover all loan payments on existing SBA obligations, meaning the 7(a) loans, the 504s, and the micro loans. So the SBA will cover loan payments, including principal, interest, and fees for a period of 6 months. So if you folks do have that kind of obligation, are continuing to pay it, that shouldn't be the case based upon the criteria in CARES Act 1. So I would get in touch with your lender, make sure that there is a transition there for the next 6 months, and that this will further assist you in preserving your working capital for these this 6 month period. Anthony, that's what I wanted to bring to your attention this morning.
Okay, looking at a number of the questions that were submitted so far, it looks like there are businesses who have not applied for either program. So Robert or Bernie, could you just go over some of the details of the PPP and the HIA-LI program, and what it's meant to do and who should apply?
Well, I'll take a first swing at it. And of course, Bernie is in the trenches a lot more than I with the details. But first of all, the HIA-LI program, it stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Right now, they're not accepting any new applications because they're approaching the applications that have been already submitted. Currently, there's an appropriation for $77 billion that has been appropriated for the EIDL advance, as well as the bulk loan portion. So right now they're going through the program, whatever has been submitted. So right now I recommend you just stay tuned and listen to see what the developments are with the EIDL program. The PPP, if you're a small business owner as defined by SBA standards, generally speaking, rule of thumb, you have less than 500 employees. Or you're a private nonprofit and you have employees, you can apply for the PPP, which stands for Paycheck Protection Program. And what you do is you would go to a lender. The EIDL was facilitated strictly by the SBA. You went online, you applied online, off it went, and now that most people are waiting for either their advance or their EIDL loan. For the PPP, it's administered by certified SBA lenders. I think Bernie did a great job articulating there's the typical lenders we think about, the banks. Everybody's got, or a lot of people have a bank they deal with often, or online lenders can be certified. Credit unions can be certified as SBA lenders. So I would recommend, I think Bernie would agree, you would start with your own bank or your own lender you do business with. Maybe you've got a business account set up, or maybe you've taken loans out in the past. They know you, they know your cash flow. They've already vetted you with your documents. So chances are they would be a good first bet. You may only have one PPP, one Paycheck Protection Program loan out. And again, that is designed to pay your employees even now while you're closed. Why? Because as soon as the doors open, those people are ready to rock and get to work. Some people have at-home training programs, whatever. I know a lot of businesses are shuttered. They're closed. You cannot open just yet. Nonetheless, people are getting approvals for the PPP currently. They have the money in hand, and they have to distribute that to their employees. There are a number of criteria on what can make all of that money forgivable, which makes it a grant in essence. You have to go through, and Bernie alluded to this, there are some things you must demonstrate to the lender that you have followed the criteria for making it totally forgivable. They use that word a lot in the literature. So the bottom line is, it's not something, I've seen some questions online, well, can I use that to acquire equipment, or can I build my business infrastructurally wise? And the answer to that is no. The express purpose of the PPP, and for the most part EIDL proceeds, goes to currently what are your bills, appropriate bills, and mainly to get into the pockets of your employees. The person that does this, or the business owner that does this correctly, is not going to walk away after the PPP has been paid off with a bunch of extra capital in their business for building things. So I'll stop there. Bernie, you see a lot of great best practices. You want to elaborate?
I'd like to follow on what would be expected to be provided for the PPP application. So the first step, obviously, is to go online, to complete the application online. Do not complete the application, hard copy, and then drop it off with your bank, okay? Maybe 1 out of 1,000 is done that way, and it presents problems. So I would always do it online. Now, beyond that 2-page simplistic application, from a perspective of what else you would be expected to provide, let me just go through that. First, copies of payroll tax reports that you would file, such as Form 941. Copies of payroll reports for each pay period for the preceding 12 months. Documentation reflecting the health insurance premiums paid by the company. Documentation of all retirement plan funding paid by the employer for the preceding 12 months. If you are a sole proprietor or independent contractor, expect to bring with you 6 months of bank statements from October 2019 to March 2020, and partial month-to-date bank statements for April. Make a copy of your driver's license, both front and back. Bring a copy of a voided check from your operating account. Also bring a copy of your 2019 IRS Form Schedule C from the 1040, and your most recently filed tax return. Now, if you haven't filed your taxes for 2019, bring your tax return for 2018, but you need to bring a Schedule C for the tax year 2019. So if your tax return hasn't been filed, fill out the Schedule C yourself, or have your accountant fill out the Schedule C for 2019 so you can bring that to the bank. Also, you must provide some sort of evidence that you were in operation around February 15th, 2020. That's the important date that you needed to be in business in order to qualify to participate in this PPP program. So if you weren't in business then, if you started your business, say, March 15th, you're precluded from being in this program. So that's a requirement as well. So, but I agree with you, Rob, and the kind of things that you said. And bottom line, from day one of the programs is get out there, submit your applications. So occasionally I would get a question like, should I actually have experienced actual losses? And I said, no. This virus, because of you shutting down, because of these businesses not being able to continue, obviously everyone knows that you're experiencing losses each and every day, okay? So if there has to be a forecast of losses over the next 3 to 6 months, which sometimes was requested, just put something in there that seems realistic. In other words, if you're a restaurant and now you're, just focusing on takeout and curbside, okay, you're not going to have the same revenues that you had previously. So if your previous revenues were, let's say, I don't know, $100,000 a month or something, now just put down that they're $10,000 a month. And it's accepted, okay, because that's what we're experiencing now. You don't need to, fine tune this, but you did need to get these applications in as soon as possible, because you see what the SBA has done, okay? They've stuck to their policy, and that is that the first ones that came in are the first ones that are going to be addressed. There's not going to be any adjustment to that. And Rob, is that what your understanding is?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. When we're talking about the PPP and we're talking about forgiveness, do we need to show hardship for forgiveness? If so, how is hardship defined?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking it. And there is no hardship issue here at all. It's merely, and I think Bernie touched on this rather nicely, as long as you use 75% of the disbursements towards paying your employees, you restore within an 8-week period those employees back to work. You can also use 25% for other allowable expenses such as rent, such as interest on your mortgage payments and utilities, provided, by the way, those mortgages and rents were in place prior to the disaster. Then that equation, there's no hardship involved. That money is going right to things that need to keep the business viable, i.e. your employees and some expenses. So that's the good news. Let me take a step back also. Some people are asking online about EIDL, and I know you cannot apply for a new EIDL currently as it is right now, but you can use those disbursements for things like accounts payable, any kind of bills or expenses that could not be paid because there's been such a drastic reduction in your revenue. It cannot be used for things like building your business back up or revenues lost. So I know a lot of people out there probably, if they didn't apply for EIDL, you're probably not going to do it now, but it was asked, so I thought I would address that. But the forgiveness portion of all these programs, with the advance, with the EIDL or the PPP, it's pretty sweet. Again, PPP, to touch real quickly, it's the 1% loan that matures in 2 years. So if you don't get totally forgiven, let's just say you can't get all your people back, they want to stay on unemployment, whatever the case, if you're not allowed complete forgiveness, and it is gradual, it's not all or nothing, whatever remains is a 1% loan over 2 years. So it makes it manageable, as well as the EIDL. For those who are getting an EIDL loan, that's a 30-year term. So again, it's a debt service that is manageable. Also, EIDL, you don't pay a nickel repayment if you don't want to for 11 months. Your first payment is due on the 12th month, so you get a deferment. With the PPP, you get a 6-month deferment. So they're trying to help you preserve your cash flow so that you can get the wheels turning in the proper manner as soon as the doors do in fact open.
Yes. I completely agree with what Rob has just said, and just would like to add, from a cost of money perspective, this is extremely cheap money. I mean, to have an interest rate fixed of 1% with a 2-year term, or to have a 30-year term in the EIDL with a fixed rate of 3 3/4%, really is unprecedented. So, and with the deferment EIDL of 11 months, and with the PPP deferment of 6 months, the initial payment for those monies that are not forgiven would be made sometime in January of 2021. So, you know, the government, I think, has done a terrific job in recognizing just, you know, the kind of situation that small businesses are in. And, you know, by putting in these kinds of terms to helping these businesses go through this most stressful period, meaning the calendar year 2020. Obviously, the hope is that by the beginning of 2021, we'll start to be getting back to normal, and we'll put the worst of this crisis behind us.
Okay, thank you. I'm being asked, how do we start with submitting an application for the Express Loan Program?
That's a great question, and Rob, I'm going to defer that one to you because on the EIDL, wait a minute, are we talking about the $10,000 advance here, or we're talking about another product?
EBL.
Okay, if we're talking about the EIDL loan product, and again, Rob, associated with that is the $10,000 up to $10,000 advance. So in the initial, when they were accepting applications, there was a check the box option on the EIDL application. So if you checked the box, then that indicated that you wanted up to the $10,000 advance. Now that the SBA isn't accepting those applications, but they funded $10 billion for the advance, how is that going to be handled? I don't know the answer to that. I was wondering if you do.
I think I'm going to interpret the question. I think they may be addressing the emergency bridge loan, which is, if you go to SBA.gov, the lending, you can find a number of different options. So there is an emergency bridge loan program that has been put into place. It's, without going into great detail, I'll tell you the biggest challenge in a moment, but it's designed to help a business owner get access to capital in a quicker fashion, hopefully in like 3 to 4 weeks, to the tune of max of $25,000. And that's designed to help you defray your business expenses and necessary expenditures, to include payroll, until you got your EIDL proceeds or even your PPP proceeds. Where to find a lender? That is always the question. Every SBA affiliated lender right now is lending. So and everything Bernie said is still remains. Most people who were SBA lenders do these, what they call 7A loans. It's a type of a 7A loan. Well, I won't go into the details about that right now, but the point is, you can find lenders. And because of the nature we're in, you can use a lender across the street or across the country virtually. But you just go to SBA.gov. It'll get you to SBA.gov /paycheck protection /find. And you type in your zip code. That will give you proximity to where you're located. But who cares? Just plug in zip codes, hunt and peck, and figure out somebody. Again, it can be somebody in Florida, it can be someone in California. But you want to move swiftly because, as I've been told, the pool is rather shallow. But that's the process you want to follow immediately if that's the case.
Okay. So we have someone who got a 10,000 grant advance from the IDL program, and they want to know, can they use it to pay rent, or does 75% have to be used for payroll?
The $10,000 grant certainly can be used to pay rent and can be used to pay all of the rent. So it doesn't have to be segregated between payroll and any other expenses. So if we're talking about this loan advance that is associated with the EIDL program that was approved and received up to $10,000, you have flexibility as far as what expenses you choose to pay with those monies.
Okay. I'm being asked, they've seen something that the PPP loan state, it could be sold on a secondary market. Do we know what that means?
I don't think that that has any relevance to the small business owner as we go through this process. Rob, maybe you could chime in on that.
Thank you for the question. People are reading the documents. That's awesome. So you're right, Bernie. What that strictly means is whoever your lender is that makes the loan to a borrower, what happens all the time, if you have a house, you have a mortgage, quite often the lender that offered you that mortgage no longer holds that note. They've sold it to other lenders that are in the business of buying up other mortgages. Not so much that they can close it, but quite often it's from a business perspective, it makes more sense for some lenders to sell off that loan that's owed for a fee to a secondary lender, and they now hold your mortgage. What it means to you, it doesn't mean they're going to call the loan tomorrow. They can't. So it's just a lender process that's put into the FAQs and the legislation, just so that lenders understand exactly how they can administer this program from a business perspective on their front. So don't be too concerned about that.
Okay. This is a specific question. It says, if payroll is covered by the PPP limited to $8,333 per month per employee, which is 100,000 limit divided by 12. I guess they're asking if that's the limit.
That is the limit, yes.
Okay. Let's see. You've had a lot of people asking, which you've answered, if the IDL must be, let's say, can I use the IDL to pay payroll for when the PPP runs out?
You can use the EIDL.
I believe that that is allowable.
Okay.
Key thing here for everybody, and I think you probably gathered this, but you just cannot use the proceeds for the same thing. You can actually interact. You can use the PPP, which is a 1% loan, to pay down your EIDL loan if that's what you choose to do. But you cannot pay Tom, Dick, and Harry with EIDL funds and then pay Tom, Dick, and Harry with PPP funds. And Bernie's a master of this. He's a big one to recommend. Keep your accounts separate so you know what money is where, and you don't intermix the two. So, Bernie?
Yes, I've been recommending that from day one. Set up a separate account, bank account, keep these expenditures for those PPP loan funds separate from anything else, so that when you go and submit your forgiveness application, makes it easier for you and makes it more easier for the lender who reviews that forgiveness application to understand just how the money was used. They have 60 days from the submission of the forgiveness application to get back to you to let you know just what amount will be able to be forgiven.
Okay. This is an interesting question. So this person has a client who furloughed their employees. So the employees are all on unemployment right now. Because of the pause order and the nature of the business, their employees cannot work. If they receive the PPP funds, are they required to call all their employees back from unemployment, or can they use the PPP funds when their business is reopened? They're saying the language is very confusing.
The PPP funds must be used during an 8-week period. The 8-week period starts when those funds are, the day that those funds are deposited in the business's operating account. So for that 8-week period, that's when they can be used to be subject to forgiveness. Okay. Now, the SBA, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Rob, they don't care whether you pay employees to stay home or whether you're asking the employees to come back to work. Okay. The important thing is that the money is going out to the employees to support their living expenses for this 8-week period of time. So That's the objective of using these funds. Now, if the employees are on unemployment, double dipping is not allowed. So if they want to go back and being paid through the PPP program, that would be preferable, actually, if those payments are associated with maintaining your health insurance. Sometimes when you go on unemployment and you lose your health insurance because of that, so you have to be aware of that because there's a benefit to coming back, or possibly there's a benefit to staying on unemployment. The benefit on unemployment would be because of this supplemental unemployment that has been provided by the federal government, $600 for 13 weeks, that oftentimes the employee is making more being on unemployment than if he would be making if he went back to work and received his normal payroll. So it's not an area where you have a definite yes or no regarding how you would address your employees, but there is some variability here.
Okay, yeah, because I don't think you can answer this, but someone did do a follow-up question saying, if their employees do not want to come back and be on the payroll, when their job is offered, should we notify the Department of Labor?
You can always notify the Department of Labor. You can say, listen, we've got work. We want them to come back to work. And then they shouldn't be on unemployment. So yes, that is an option.
Okay.
Just to clarify, Anthony, the program is set up that you have to restore your pre-disaster workforce using these funds. I hate to say this, but it may not be the same people. If they choose not to, and they have the vision that they're going to benefit from this unemployment stimulus, that's certainly up to them. But you may hire in their stead, as long as your head count is the same as pre-disaster. You're meeting the criteria for forgiveness. I get it, the fact that the people who are not coming back are trained, they're skilled in a certain task or regimen. I certainly understand that. But just so you know, and as to Bernie's point, we're not experts in unemployment. That's a different webinar, different people sitting here.
Right.
But to your point, if they turn down your job offer, at some point there's going to be an accounting of there was work available, and they'll have to answer why they were taking unemployment benefits when their job was basically restored. At this point, folks, I have to excuse myself, but this has been awesome. Anthony and Terry, great job of doing this. I'm going to zoom over to a different venue right now, but thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing you next event.
Okay, thank you, Robert. So Bernie, I do have one other question. It's probably Robert is the one, but I'll rely on your expertise. So
All right.
We have someone that submitted an application to their bank April 6th and was approved for the SBA loan.
Now, which one is this, the PPP or the EIDL? It sounds like PPP.
The EIDL.
Oh,
So it was approved. So it was there, but then the money ran out, so it was never funded. My bank submitted it again when it reopened. How long should it take before they hear yes or no? So I guess they submitted an application, it was approved, but then the funds ran out, what the SBA had.
and that's a good example of why banks are accepting additional applications in the PPP product, because situations like this come up where they were approved and then there was no further money. So I would anticipate that they're pretty close to the front of the line here, okay? And because it was approved, and now that we have additional funds, that they should be funded, I would think quite soon. I mean, and we're not talking weeks here. We're probably talking a matter of a couple of days.
Right.
That's my expectation.
Yeah, that was another question. When can they expect funding for the second wave? Okay.
Right.
The one of the things I do have to ask you, as you know, our organization is a 501c6. Discover Long Island is a 501c6. 501c6 have not been included in the latest stimulus.
Hmm.
What's your view? You're hearing anything on that?
Well, I was disappointed to hear that several days ago. You know, one of the questions that I got through another Zoom meeting was through one of the chambers. And at that point in time, it seemed to me, based upon what I was reading and hearing, that chambers were going to be allowed to, get monies through the EIDL program. That's what I was representing. And then we had what I would characterize as one of these clarifications from the SBA saying that 501c6s were not one of the kinds of organizations based upon the IRS code that would be qualified for these. My what I would expect is that organizations such as chambers, such as yours, would be contacting, the Congress people, the U.S. senators to bring this to their attention and ask for relief. I do know that there's going to be another, at least one program here that talking about, support for the states, for other municipalities such as towns and counties. Possibly this could be linked to that because organizations such as yourself are not traditional business organizations. You're not in it necessarily, obviously, to you don't have a product that you sell and make a profit, all those things. Yet, I mean, there are just so many of the organizations that are critical to the success of business in the country. And so I think that's the message that you have to convey to your Congress people that, unfortunately, we've been overlooked, but we are experiencing fiscal stress as well. We provide these kind of services to our members. They feel that we're critical. Please think of us in the next round of funding.
Yep, and that's exactly what we're doing right now too. And actually that question I asked you for about the funds running out, it was not an IDL product, it was the PPP.
Oh, okay. Then my answer was spot on then.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Let's see if we have any more questions. It seems like most people had the same question, when they could expect funding. The employees are concerned to a number of people. I think you answered this. Any insights on the time frame to receive the main EIDL loan after receiving the advance?
Well, let me just speak to that for a minute. We've had numerous clients that have reached out to us and said, I've been fortunate to contact the SBA to see just where my EIDL loan application stands, and they've been of little or no help because the system in and of itself precludes them from determining where in the process their application stands. But what I can share with you is this. As you get closer to the end of the process, that you get closer to the hoped for review and then approval by the SBA, you will receive an email from the SBA. Keep in mind, if I haven't represented it before in front of this audience, that what I've been told is up to half of emails from SBA go into spam folders for whatever reason. So you have to check your spam folder as well. What that email will say is that they want you to establish a interface with their portal. Okay, you're going to submit a username and a password, so you will have access to this EIDL portal. Once you do that, you're real close to being approved. Within a day or so, they will indicate to you the size of the loan that they're considering for you, And so that's a terrific sign that you've been asked to submit a username and password in order to have access to the portal. Before then, it's just a big black hole. Even the people in the SBA can't tell where it is, whether you're number 1,000 or 100,000. So that's just the system that we have to live with.
Right. Well, as of right now, I don't have any more questions. Do you want to make any closing comments, Bernie?
Well, if you'd like to send me your questions subsequent to this get together this morning, my email address is Bernard, BERNARD .Ryba. Last name is spelled RYBA at Stonybrook, all one word, stonybrook.edu. And I'll be glad to address them and get back to you within the same day.
Okay. I want to thank you.
I'd like to say,
Robert, obviously. I also want to thank everyone in attendance for signing in this morning. I will say, you know, Terry Maselli, our president and CEO, is in contact with both Nassau and Suffolk County, New York State, and Washington, D.C. daily as we get information in. We're posting it on a special landing page on our website, and we are sending it out. So please check our social media. You should be getting emails, and please go to our website. You'll get the latest updates that we have. And we will all get through this. We'll get through it together. So I want to thank everyone for attending, and thank you, Bernie, and I'll thank Rob later. Thanks a lot.
all right, Anthony, have a great day.
Yep.
Goodbye, everyone.
All right. Thank you.